guys, I'm going to make this video to talk about one of these examples from chapter 4 on quantitative data. So I'm going to look at this example on Wayne Gretzky, who was nicknamed the Great One for how awesome he was in the NHL many, many years ago. But they've given us the 20 seasons he played in the NHL, as well as the number of games that he played each season. And if you're unfamiliar with the NHL, the National Hockey League, totally fine. You can still answer this question. Just like the NBA, the National Basketball Association League, they play 82 games in a season. All right, so the first part A, says to create a stem and leaf display for these data. Stem and leaf display, I'll have another video you can watch about this. I made this video a couple years ago using Desmos. So I'm doing it again because one thing I want to make sure that this year in AP Stats that everyone feels comfortable with using the TI-84. So if you have your TI-84 with you in class, or you got your Calculate 84 app open on your phone, I'm going to be showing you how to do this using the TI-84. And a stem and leaf display is not really going to, it might show up on the AP exam, but it's very unlikely that it's going to be there if at all. So I want to focus on creating a histogram in the TI-84. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my calculator, all right, which I have here, and I'm going to show you how to get to typing in all of these numbers, okay? So I'm going to go to Stat, and then Edit, and I'm going to type all of Wayne Gretzky's games into this calculator, all right? So I'm going to type in 79 and hit enter. Then there's 3 80s. I have 74 and 2 more 80s and 79. Excuse me, sorry about that. Let's try again. Hold on. Let's delete this. There we go. So 79, 64, 78, 73, another 78, 74. I'm going to hit enter after all of these. 45, 81, 48, 80, 82, 2 of them, and then finally 70. Okay, make sure you hit enter on that last one. If you don't, you won't get that last number in there. So we have 20, I know it says 21, but there's no number in my 21st spot. So I have 20 in here, which is what I wanted for my number of seasons he played in the NHL. Okay, so now, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of these numbers. I'm going to ask the calculator to create a histogram. So it's going to put it into bins. All right, so it's going to create bins of a certain width, probably somewhere between 3 and 6 games. And it's going to slot these data values into those bins to create a histogram. Okay, so here's how you do it. First, we need to tell the computer what we're going to do, the calculator what we're going to do. So you're going to go to second stat plot up here in the top left, and you're going to turn plot 1 on. So hit enter on stat plot 1. So hit enter, and I'm going to turn it on. Right now it's off, right? See how it's dark around the OFF off. So I'm going to hit enter on. So I've turned it on. I'm going to go down. And the one that I want to use, which is the histogram, is this third one to the right. So this one here. So hit enter on that one to make it a histogram. All right, you'll notice that it only gives me an option for one list because a histogram is about one quantitative variable, which in this case is going to be our number of games played in his 20 seasons. So you can scroll down if you want, but it's all in list 1. So you just hit enter. And now to look at it, I'm going to hit this top right button that says graph. So if you click graph, there it is. And you're like, wait, Mr. Frederick, where is it? No worries. All right, this is just looking at the typical window going from -10 to 10 on the x-axis, -10 to 10 on the y-axis. Obviously, our games are, I think our lowest one was 45 or something like that, and all the way up to 82. So it's not going to see it. So what you do is you click zoom, this button here where it says zoom. So click zoom, and then you can scroll down, and the one we're going to click is zoom stat. All right, so zoom stat number 9. So hit enter on number 9. And there's our histogram. Look at that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch that in the slide next to this, or I should say the area next to this problem on my notes. But I just want to show you all the keystrokes on how to make a histogram. And hopefully, the idea of doing this from the get-go is that you'll have a chance to do this a lot. So if you're asked to make a histogram on the AP exam, all right, you'll feel comfortable enough to do that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and sketch this over here. All right, so we've got, we'll look at it again. So we have a little bar, a little one, and then a space. And this one's a little shorter. Again, just a sketch, guys. And then we go up a little higher. And then it's pretty high on the next one, I think. Yes, so pretty high up. And then the last one is the same height as the first one. All right, and that's it for my histogram. Now, we're going to later on in this problem kind of describe this, all right? But looking at this shape of this histogram, it looks like there's one main hump right here. There's one main hump. So that is unimodal. And it looks like if you were to take this piece away, you could probably convince me that it's roughly symmetric. But because of that gap and then that bar or that bin over there to the far left, I'm going to say it's unimodal with some maybe potential skewness to the left, or you could say that it just has a gap and there's some values that are far to the left, maybe potentially some outliers even, right? I'm not going to say the word that they're actually outliers because I haven't calculated that. You don't really know what that or how to calculate that yet till next chapter, but we could say that potentially they could be unusual features, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. All right, so I'm going to answer letter B. I started doing that already. I'm going to answer letter B up here, okay? So I'm going to describe the shape, all right? The distribution is unimodal and has potential outliers. All right, now it wants me to talk about the center, and I could just eyeball this. It doesn't give me any. This is the limitations of using technology from the early 2000s, that it doesn't give me any units here. So what I would say is to go back to the calculator, and let's go ahead and find the 5-number summary, which is essentially going to give us the minimum, the quartile 1, the median, quartile 3, and the maximum. So to give us a little context for what we're going to write about for our distribution. So here's how you do it. I'm going to go to stat, this right here. So stat, click stat, then click over to calculate. And we're only dealing with one variable right now. So I'm going to do one var stats, which is one variable statistics. So hit enter on number 1. I've only put anything into list 1, or I put all 20 data values into list 1. So just hit down, enter. Sorry, I should say hit enter, not down. Hit enter a bunch of times. So you have to calculate, hit enter again. And then it gives us our statistics. Now, there's a bunch of stuff going on here, which we'll talk about as we move further along in this unit 1. I will point out the very first thing says X bar. You'll notice that in our class, I'm going to teach you to use Y bar for reasons that if you take upper level stats in college, you will understand. But X bar, Y bar just means the mean. So the average games that Wayne Gretzky played in his 20 seasons was 74.35 games. But I want to scroll down to the other stuff, which is giving us this 5-number summary here. Awesome. I can get all of it in the same one. So I already mentioned that it's the minimum, the quartile 1, the median, quartile 3, and the maximum, which you can see there are the bottom 5 numbers. And that n equals 20 is just what we call our sample size. All right, which you don't need to know that word yet, but just showing you that there's 20 data values. All right, so the reason I wanted to do this before I write down the rest of my description of my distribution is I want to use the median. You're going to find out as we go in these next couple of chapters that if the shape of your histogram is not unimodal and roughly symmetric, then I'm not going to use the mean and the standard deviation. I'm going to be using the median and the interquartile range, which we call the IQR. All right. So I'm going to use the median of 79 games to describe the center here. So I'm going to go over here to my sentence and say that the median of games played is 79 games per season. And now when I look at that number, right, just to give context here, you don't have to do this, but I know there are 82 games in an NHL season. So 79 games as the median each year. I mean, that's pretty close to playing all the games. So pretty impressive from Wayne Gretzky. Now let's talk about the spread. You've got options for describing the spread. The most basic one is to do the highest minus the lowest, which if you're looking at your calculator, we know the highest is 82, the lowest is 45 games. You can do the range. All right, you guys learned that in middle school. But I'm going to use a more specific range, the interquartile range, which is quartile 3 minus quartile 1. All right, this is called the interquartile range, or from here on out, the IQR. Okay, so that's going to be, I believe it is 80 minus 73.5, which is 6.5 games. Again, you're going to see as we move forward in this chapter and the next one, the reason of why I did that linkage, and it's all because of the shape that I described when I looked at my histogram. So the IQR is 6.5 games. All right, and that checks all three boxes. I described the shape as unimodal with potential outliers. I described the center using the median, and I described the spread using the IQR. So I've checked all three boxes, and the key thing is I put into context talking about NHL games played per season. So make sure you include that in your AP responses, and you always include the context of the problem, or you won't get full credit. Now let's answer question C, and then we'll be done. It says, what unusual feature do you see? And I already kind of mentioned this. It's this bin over here that's farther away from the rest of our histogram, and it looks like that's because in 2 seasons, I'll highlight them, one of the seasons, Wayne only played 45 games out of 82, and another one he played only 48. So what would be a potential reason? I don't actually know without Googling his career, but what could be a reason for someone only playing 45 or 48 games out of 82 total games? Probably have a good idea if you watch any sports, but in this case, I'm going to say that in 2 seasons, Wayne only played 45 and 48 games. And what might explain this? I'm going to say maybe he sustained a long-term injury. Right? I don't know. I'm guessing, again, I have to look at his career about what happened, but I'm going to guess that there was some injury involved, right? It is a contact sport. So I'm guessing, over the course of his 20 seasons, there were a few seasons where maybe he was injured and wasn't able to play close to 82 games. All right. So that's it for this one. Hopefully you feel confident, looking at trying to do the calculator button pushing either on your phone or on the calculator in class. The key thing is if you're doing anything, calculation wise, I'm not saying 9 times 6, but if you're doing anything where it's asking you to do some type of calculating statistics or creating a graphical display, please, I know I've got videos on my website and on Classroom that show you how to do it with Desmos. Please try to use the 84. It's only going to make you getting a 3 or higher in May on the AP exam a higher likelihood of happening. So get used to the 84. You know my thoughts on it. I'm not in love with it. But hey, at the end of the day, you got to deal with it because that's what you're going to use on the AP test. All right? Good luck.